Welcome to Dental Success Beyond Chairside, the podcast that's dedicated to revolutionising the way dental professionals succeed beyond the dental chair. Join us for a unique blend of insightful interviews with industry experts to help you thrive in your dental specialist practice. In each 20-minute episode, we'll delve into a variety of subjects, including HR, marketing, innovative techniques and systems, and AI to help transform your practice and unlock its full potential. Whether you're a dentist or specialist looking to enhance your practice, this podcast is your go-to resource for professional, personal, and profitable success. Hello, and welcome to today's episode. Have you ever needed to performance manage a team member but hesitated because you don't like conflict or it might rock the boat? Today, I'm thrilled to welcome Andrew Bland, Principal Lawyer at BlandsLaw. Andrew specialises in employee relations, commercial law and litigation. He's known for his friendly, relaxed approach and his commitment to avoiding complex lawyer speak when providing solutions for his clients. Andrew, could you share a bit of your story with the dental community as well as key strategies for managing employee performance to build a successful team?
Thanks, Michelle. Great to be here. A bit about us just quickly. BlandsLaw has been going for 18 years. We've got a small boutique team here in Sydney. We service the entire country. We act for employers and trying to understand and to really solve the problems around HR. Performance management is something that is very popular in terms of what we're asked to advise on. And the reason for that is because, human beings aren't robots and there's lots of different reactions to different things that happen in the workplace. There are so many different strategies for applying performance management, and it really depends on what the employee's reaction is, where you are in the process and so on. I'm happy to sort of get into that in a bit more detail.
I was just going to say, so Andrew, with the dental industry, many members are part of the Australian Dental Association, and Australian Dental Association do have a HR department. It's a very limited HR department. But as part of those resources, they do have a part on performance managing with performance counselling and how to actually do it. And it is quite a good step-by-step thing to do. Prior to going into that performance management, if practices are part of the Australian Dental Association, they can access that counselling with how to do it. And they can have it's just verbal. They don't help them actually write it or come in with them, but they do help them over the phone.
And it's a great service. It's great to have sort of a few steps to follow. I think, though, that in most occasions, following those steps is only going to get you so far. For example, performance management, it's not necessarily about misconduct, but it's about someone that's not doing their job. The overarching concept here is that the employer needs to give the employee the opportunity to fix up their performance. We can talk about warnings, and that depends on the size of your business, how many warnings are required, all those sorts of things. But there's the reason why you're conducting performance management, that is, they're not performing. On top of that, and importantly, is the process involved. You can have the best reasons in the world for conducting performance management, but if you don't follow the proper processes, you're going to end up in the Fair Work Commission in an unfair dismissal claim, because the process is just as important as the reason. Some of those precedents would be helpful, but as I said at the top, employees react in different ways, and you may need to sort of go off script, probably will need to go off script because of the way in which employees may react.
Absolutely, because I feel like the biggest pain point that I go into most practices is HR. Generally, there are performance issues, but people don't know how to address it. It's a conflict when you're going in. They try and avoid it. By the very nature of dental practitioners, they care about people. If you could go through the process, that would be fantastic.
Absolutely true, particularly in small businesses. Employers do try and avoid it, and the employees are obviously trying to avoid it too. So a couple of things. Obviously, in terms of the process, there's a thing called a support person. So giving people ample notice, usually 24 hours, of a performance management meeting, allowing them to bring a support person is critical to that. If you don't do that, you're going to fail the process straight away. but then they may not turn up. And this is where you get into these, the different sort of reactions that occur. There'll be an employee that might say, well, I'm sick. They put in the sick leave certificate. Can you run the performance management meeting even though they're sick? The obvious answer to that is no. Well, you may think it's obvious, but sometimes it's not. You can't conduct or pursue any performance management when people have personal leave. The other thing that may happen is there might be a counterclaim, for example, bullying claim. The employee may say, well, you think I'm not performing my job well. Well, actually, it's because I'm being bullied and your management is unreasonable. These are all strategies that employees often apply to avoid the process. And the important part is that you don't derail your own process, that you make sure that you deal with those things and not kind of, as I often say, don't fall at the final hurdle. You might be all the way well down a performance management process, and then something like a sick leave certificate comes in. Don't move on to the next step. You need to sort of hold and go from there. So lots of trips and traps that occur, and that's just two examples of those.
I think that I've seen those. I've performance managed, unfortunately, quite a few people. And generally when you do, we're going to have a discussion, please bring a support person, and then immediately you get a sick leave certificate. Then it's like, okay, they might have accrued quite a bit of leave, and then it's another week, and it puts a lot of pressure on the staff as well. I think when owners are talking to each other about things, that's why they avoid it as well, because it ends up putting a lot more pressure on the team to do it. Do you think engaging a professional person like yourself to conduct those and help those to support the owners is a good way to go?
Absolutely. Look, having someone in the background is really important. I don't necessarily advocate having a lawyer in the meeting, because I think that the ultimate thing with performance management is yes, it is disciplinary, but the ultimate aim here is, let's face it, to fix up that performance and get that employee back on track. And so you don't want to be too confrontational either in the way that you go about it. What I generally suggest is that I'm happy to sit in the background. I'll advise, this is the way you go about it. This is, provide a script for the meeting. You go about your meeting and then talk about the types of things that may happen in that meeting and the things to look out for. We sort of sit as a sort of in the background as an advisory, in an advisory capacity. But my clients have told me that it's very useful because they're prepared for the actual meeting, what they have to say, but they're also prepared for the types of things that may occur from the employee's side of things. So really useful to have someone like me or, an experienced HR professional to help you with that process.
I think, as you said, understanding what might happen with the outcomes, with the reactions, that's really sticking to that script as well. Having a support person to help you through that is a good thing, because I've seen that as well. And bullying does come up quite a lot as well.
Yeah.
When you're actually doing that sort of thing. So verbiage and everything to help overcome that, to understand it, and to sort of go away and think about it. With regard to when you're doing the counselling, do you help with the strategies with what they can do to actually improve their performance? Because that's part of that process.
Look, it's more about communicating. The thing about performance management is it's all about communication. As I said at the top, letting people understand what is required to fixing up their performance, A, and then B, giving them the time to do it. A common example I see is where employers go in and say, well, look, you're not performing and these are the reasons, and I'm going to give you 2 weeks to fix it up. If you don't fix it up, then we're going to move on to the next stage of another warning. In most circumstances, you're going to need more than 2 weeks in order to be able to monitor and calculate and measure whether someone has adequately performed. The other problem that occurs also is, look, you might give them a month or 6 weeks or whatever, but you're not clearly communicating what is expected. Where I can assist is not so much in, well, you need to be, in your sales plans, putting in these things that you're missing out on, or, whatever sort of technical stuff might apply, whether it be in dentistry or any other industry. But where I can assist is that clear obligation to make it absolutely clear to the employee what is expected. And that should be done in writing, and it should be done in a way that can be understood. And as part of that, the employee should be asked whether they understand it and whether they understand what is expected of them and why. Where I can assist is, yes, in the process of making sure that as I say, there's a support person there, and that you go through the meeting and in a calm and reflective way. But also the message. Is the message clear? That's critically important, because what employees will say is, well, I didn't understand in that meeting what you meant by that, because it was confusing or, whatever. And that's where we can assist, is making sure that you're getting from point A to point B, whether that be further down the disciplinary road, or more importantly and hopefully getting that employee to improve their performance so that the performance improvement plan ends as soon as possible in a good result.
And the big thing, as you were talking about with communication, is when you're actually in that meeting and setting up the plan, like you might have the 6 weeks to do it, but you need to meet with them regularly, whether it be weekly, to see how they're going to help them get there to where you want them to be as well, because engaging a staff member is an expensive exercise. If you're able to retain them, and sometimes they can be your raving employees because they sometimes just didn't even realise that they weren't doing what they needed to do. I know when I've spoken to some team members, they were like, well, this would have been the expectation, that you would know how to set up trays within this sort of time. And I just remember the staff member looking at me and going, oh, really? I didn't even know that sort of thing. Do you know what I mean? So then they can improve quite easily. It might be just something really basic, and just bringing up little easy things that it's easy to manage. Coming in earlier when you've got performance issues is probably an easier thing, do you think, Andrew?
Absolutely, Michelle, and it's spot on. I mean, part of the problems I see is that employees turn up and they say, well, I didn't know that I wasn't performing, because you haven't had those informal discussions prior to getting to the performance management. I mean, someone that turns up performance management meeting should be absolutely aware of the fact that they're not performing, because there's been those informal discussions, the coffee meetings, whatever, weekly catch-ups that have occurred prior to starting that process. And even further than that, making sure that I've had situations with employers where they've said, well, you're not doing A, B, and C. And the employee said, well, I didn't know I had to do that. I mean, it's not in my KPIs. It hasn't been communicated to me at all that was part of my role. So there shouldn't be any surprises when you get to the commencing the performance management process. And then, as you said, if we give them 6 weeks and 6 weeks occurs, both parties should have a really good idea of whether those expectations have been met during that 6-week period. And that should be done, as you say, through weekly catch-ups. Yes, you're doing a good job here, but this is still lacking. Or yes, this is great. Or, look, you're not understanding. Do we need to have another discussion about what is expected, because it doesn't seem to be working? Having those, again, catch-ups prior to the next meeting are critically important to the process, both from a disciplinary perspective, but also, as I say, from trying to get them back on track.
So ideally that's the outcome, but then you might have those employees that are just like, oh my goodness, I've been put off. Then they lodge that unfair dismissal claim. That unfair dismissal claim, I don't know how much it was. We've been taken for unfair dismissal a couple of times, and it used to only be $30 to lodge it. That was like, really? Is it still like that, or do they have to actually show to the commission what's going on?
No, it's $75, something like that. I mean, I don't act for employees, but it's a pretty small fee. In fact, they get that back at the end if the matter resolves. There's really no financial barrier to bringing a claim, and unfortunately, look, none of this will stop a claim being brought, but it will improve your chances of defending it effectively and or negotiating a strong outcome for yourselves as the employer. Because if you can come in on the front foot on an unfair dismissal of the claim and say there's a compulsory mediation, you say to the mediator, we've done this, we did that, we did A, B, C, D, and E. He or she came back with these responses. We gave them a warning, we gave them another warning, etc., etc. We gave them a reasonable opportunity to fix up their performance. It's going to be good evidence, but more importantly, in terms of negotiating an outcome, you can go in and say, well, look, we've got a really strong case. We're not offering anything like what you want or what you expect. The mediator, in my experience, will assist with that if you've got the strong case. If you don't, if you haven't done any of that preparatory work, you're on the back foot, and that's going to create problems in terms of trying to negotiate a settlement, but also the expenses of having to go to court and everything that entails.
I mean, I think most things get picked up at mediation, but as you said, setting up those systems for success in performance managing by doing what you've actually said, having a support person to be there as the background to make sure you're doing it, and not getting emotionally involved. I think that's what's really hard as well, is there's a lot of practitioners out there. It's a really small team, and then someone's not performing, and then they go into this performance and it's, hey, what's happening? Then they say, this is what we've noticed, whatever, obviously the script that you've prepared to help them do. And then they just go, oh, well, you're bullying me or you're doing this. It's taken very personally. And they're like, I've just done everything. And then there's that weight on top of them, trying to remain focused and think, no, I'm doing the right thing for them, I'm doing the right thing for me, is really important. And then having a support of a professional person in assisting that as well. But if it does go down that route with unfair dismissal, it's going to obviously protected because it's been blown out, but it's going to be to the benefit of the employee at the end of the day, isn't it?
It is, absolutely. As I said, following the process, having a good process, not losing it when someone says, oh, you're bullying me, or gets upset, and you're not getting upset either as the employer. They're absolutely critical in those things. But it is hard. I appreciate, you can follow a script, but then things go off in different directions. And there's all sorts of different reactions. I always say to my clients, you just need to remain as calm as possible. This isn't personal. This is really just about trying to help them. If you communicate that in a way that's not confrontational and say, the goal for us is to get you back on track. Don't feel like this is us trying to force you out. And that communication and the tone in which that's said and communicated is obviously going to help with that outcome. But it is hard. I mean, particularly in small businesses where you can't go and hide in an outside office. Everyone's sort of on top of each other. It can be really difficult, and appreciate that. And that's why it's so important about having that backup to assist you with how you go about it.
I think ultimately, if you think of performance management as the goal, as performance counselling, to get them to remain on your team because that's what you want to have them there, that's why you've engaged them initially, and you want the best for the team, then to focus it more that way is a good way to actually approach it.
Absolutely. It's going in with that positive, constructive tone and communication is important. You may need to go down those warnings and ultimately terminate the employee if they don't fix up their performance. But giving them that opportunity is paramount, both from a sort of moral perspective, but also obviously from my perspective, a legal perspective.
I'd have to say, when I've done the performance management and I've had the script, I've practiced what I'm going to say to ensure the tone and everything is okay. Like the importance of that in doing it rather than just going in there and reading it like this, and then just engaging and watching the body language is important as well. Yeah. What else would you add?
I think that pretty much covers it. The one thing we didn't I just touch on very briefly is the role of the support person, which is really important too, because they're not there as an advocate. Quite often you'll get lawyers turning up, particularly ones that don't know employment law and so don't know the role of the support person, or union representatives or family members, but where they start speaking over you or speaking for the employee, you just need to be able to say at the beginning, this is the role of the support person. You're there as a support, not an advocate. If you wish to take a break, absolutely take a break. You can talk to your support person, but they're not to speak on your behalf. If you lay those ground rules early, I've seen meetings go off the rails because, the support person turns into someone that thinks that they can talk on behalf of the employee, and communicating again that role, but also saying this is supposed to be a conversation. This is a communication. It's not us laying down the law. It's us saying to you, you're not doing your job adequately. What do you need from us to help you do that? Again, getting back to that constructive conversation. What do you need? Here are some things that we can help you with. We're going to give you time. Do you have any questions? Do you have any comments on the process? Do you think we're being unfair? Get them to respond and get them to have that sort of two-way communication, because if you get that, I think the chances of a successful outcome are far much greater than if you just go in and start dictating what, you want and what you want to say.
The way you've explained it, Andrew, is great. I think many people go, yeah, that's really good. And then it's like, how do we do that? That's absolutely fantastic. And I think what we've learned today really is, for performance management, get in early. If you've got some performance issues, just speak informally to let them know so it doesn't actually get down that route. If it does, be prepared, but go in with an open mind that it's about improvement and wanting them to retain on your team. The support person, thankfully, I've never had a lawyer or union rep come along. Oh, so that was great that you shared that with us. So for more information about Andrew, including links to his work and social media profiles, please check out the episode description. Thank you so much, Andrew, for being with us today and sharing your insights into performance management and what we need to do to improve and have a great, successful team. Thank you so much.
Pleasure, Michelle. Thank you.
If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to our podcast or YouTube channel. Your feedback helps us continue delivering valuable content and insights from leaders in the dental industry. In our next episode of Dental Success Beyond Chairside, we'll be joined by Christy Lee Billett, founder of People Powered Business. She'll be discussing the recent employment relation reforms, the most significant changes since Fair Work began, and exploring their impact on dental practices. This is an episode you won't want to miss. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.